This video is rated BS for baby steps. Actually, scratch that. This video is not BS. Let's try that again. This video is rated YGT for You Got This. Also, kind of sounds like a title of an Insecure episode. Whatever. What's up, guys? My name is Frankie. This is the Money Resolution, where we talk all things financial independence and early retirement. I'm on a mission to retire early myself, and I am hoping to bring as many people along on the journey as I can. Because this isn't about my journey, this is about yours. So subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this one weekly, and give me a virtual high five in the comments down below if you're new to the channel and you're digging this kind of information. And like this video, of course. If you like this video, it does go a long way in helping other people discover it. And here's a twist before we get started. I am actually going to jump right in. The reason for that is in my last video, there was something like 5 minutes of introduction. So today is opposite day. Wait, is there such a thing as opposite day? I gotta check this out. Okay, there is, and it's once a month. Let's jump into the tips. If you are just getting started on your journey towards financial independence, you are in the right place. Today, I have 5 tips for you. Plus, stick around because after that, I have 3 or so bonus tips. Step 1 is to sit down and write down the 10 most important things to you. Ideally, you can do this on just paper with a pen. You can also type this up on a computer if you want. But I first heard about this idea through the movie Playing with Fire. No, not the movie with John Cena, the documentary Playing with Fire. The main couple in this video went through this exercise to make sure that they were aligned and they were ready to get started on their mission towards FI. So they sat down and they each wrote 5 to 10 things that they cared most about. What were the things that made them happiest? What were the things that they couldn't live without? And I'll go ahead and put it on screen here now. And his are on the left, hers are on the right. And this is where they made a big discovery. Most of the things, as you can see on this list, the things that they value most, that they care about the most, the things that make them the happiest, aren't things that cost money. This made it super easy for this couple to decide to pursue FI. So this is an excellent exercise for you to try as well. But here's the truth. If you go through this exercise and you find that a bunch of things on your list actually cost money, like a lot of money, FI may not be for you. These are things like multiple cars, lots of vacations. I want to have the biggest house on the block. That's all good and great, but I'm going to tell you now that aiming to save 50% or more, which is what people aim to save in the FIRE community that want to retire early, is going to be next to impossible if those are the things that you value. But if those aren't the things that you value and the things on your list are, again, things that are inexpensive, like spending time with other people, jogging, working out, reading, learning, whatever, then you are in the right place and you're ready to continue because YGT. It's corny. Step 2 is to know your net worth and to calculate your FI number. So before you think about goals, before you think about what to invest in, before you think about which martini you're gonna order when you're sipping drinks on the beach in retirement, you need to know where you currently stand. And odds are it's not a sandy beach. Knowing your net worth was where I started with my journey back in 2018. And I'm gonna be honest, I went into that exercise thinking my net worth was negative 6 figures at least. This is actually why knowing your net worth can be powerful, because not only do you not know what you don't know, you might actually be surprised by your net worth. It may not be as bad as you think it is. When I actually sat down to calculate my net worth, seeing that number that was improved $15,000 to $20,000 from the number I had in my head was that exciting boost I needed in the beginning that really jump-started my mission and got me going right away. Because here's the truth, before I knew my net worth, I used to have conversations with myself, keeping myself up at night, thinking things like, what burden am I going to cause on my family if something were to happen to me because they have to deal with all this debt? That's a really horrible place to be in, and I wish it wasn't the case. But without knowing my net worth and without having a plan, those are the types of conversations we have with ourselves. So it's extremely important that you calculate your net worth and know where you stand. That way you can set goals. Now, again, calculating your net worth is taking all of your savings, all of your investments, and all of your assets that aren't going to depreciate over time and subtract from that number all your liabilities. So all of the things you owe, all of your debts, for example. The second part of this tip, I'm not gonna spend too much time on here, which is to calculate your FI number. That's your financial independence number. This is the amount of money that when you have it saved and invested, work becomes optional. I actually did a whole video on calculating your FI number. So if you're interested in this step, definitely check out that video next. So to recap step 2 here, it's to calculate your net worth and calculate your financial independence number. This way you know exactly where you stand and what your ultimate goal, your North Star is there with your financial independence number. Step number 3 is to build up an emergency fund and to put it in a high interest savings account. So this is your financial buffer. This is your rainy day fund. This is cash you have set aside and easily accessible within a day or two. Not money that's invested, but actually just in a savings account that you can easily access in case of emergency only. But I will say this, if you do face an emergency, and 2020 is kind of a great example of that, make sure that if you have this money set aside, you use this money. Don't let this emergency money just sit there while you go swiping away on your credit card to pay for emergencies. That puts you in an even worse hole. So I know this isn't a super sexy step here, but it is honestly probably the most important on this list and the most important step anyone can take when they're just getting started with DIYing their finances. Many recommend that you save 3 to 6 months of expenses. So the first thing you're gonna wanna know is, what are your monthly expenses? So you're gonna wanna sit down and calculate all of your bills, your housing, your food, your transportation, any minimum debt payments you have to make every month. Exclude things like wants, because in the case of emergency, it's pretty easy to get rid of those wants. Easy. Push comes to shove. At a bare minimum, I recommend you save up at least 1 month if you're just getting started. And I wanna make sure that this point is extremely clear. This is not money that's invested in your 401k. This is not money that's invested in cryptocurrency or anything else risky that it could potentially lose value. You should never take risk with your emergency fund. So what I actually recommend you do is stash this emergency fund in a high interest savings account. For me, that's Ally, which is an online account. And yeah, I think I recommend Ally. No matter where you go, you're not gonna get the 1.82% we were seeing early in 2019. But as long as you're getting more than you would get at the big banks, something like 0.02%, you're in good shape. So don't overthink it. You don't have to get super exact here with what your monthly expenses are, but try to build it up and put it in a high interest savings account. You might get stuck on this step for a while if I'm being totally honest. For instance, if you need to save $5,000 and you aim to save $500 a month, that's 10 months. If it's $10,000 and you save $500 a month, that's 20 months. But if you're really aggressive and smart, you might be able to save $1,000 a month and build up a solid fund in 3 to 6 months. Plus, if you do this and you're aggressive and you set aside $1,000 or more towards your emergency fund, future steps on your financial independence journey are gonna be a lot easier because you're used to saving that amount of money. Again, eventually you're gonna wanna get your savings rate up to 40, 50% or more. So this is a great starting point and an exercise that's gonna force you to live with a little bit less in the short term. Now, honestly, with step number 4, I decided to pivot right before hitting record because the original step here was to learn about tax advantage investment accounts. But I realize it might be a little bit too soon to do that, and there's something even more important and more valuable that I recommend you do. And as a side benefit, you might end up actually learning about tax advantage accounts. Step number 4 is to join FI or FIRE communities. And I love this step because this is something that you can action on immediately after watching this video, or actually potentially right now while you're watching this video if you subscribe to the Money Resolution. The FIRE community, the FI community is extremely welcoming, and there are lots of different ways to access and tap into this information out there. So if you're a big podcast listener, for example, definitely subscribe to a few FIRE podcasts and prioritize listening to those over other things you love, like murder mystery podcasts or fantasy football podcasts. I don't know why I'm picking on those. Like you're doing now, find more videos on YouTube. There are tons and tons of channels out there you could subscribe to that talk specifically about FIRE and their journey. So find somebody that's going through a journey that's similar to yours, for example. And commit to watching at least one YouTube video a day if you're just getting started. That's just 5 to 10 minutes of your day. Or if it's my videos, probably 15 to 20. I can't help it. And find a few books. I will link a few in the description down below that are my favorite that I recommend if you're just getting started. I feel like I have to recommend my first book, The Money Resolution. This is my transformation story where I documented everything I did in my mission to DIY my money from scratch in 1 year. And yeah, it's all the best tips, 101 in here. Definitely check it out and support the channel. Link in the description down below. Now, all those are passive ways to sort of engage with FI and the FIRE community, but one recommendation I actually want to give you that's going to be super helpful and more active is to join a Facebook group. You might be surprised to learn that there's probably a FI Facebook group that's centered around or targeting people in your neighborhood. So, for example, I'm a member of Choose FI Seattle on Facebook. What's really great about this is people are asking brutally honest questions about their situations, they're asking for recommendations, people are giving recommendations. So it's a really good open space to talk about money with people that have similar goals to you. By the way, when it comes to books, podcasts, YouTube videos, all these things about fire. I'd be more than happy to put together a video with all of my recommendations. I use almost all of my spare moments of my day consuming this information, so let me know if that's a video you'd love to see here on the channel. Step number 5 is to give up 1 or 2 things that you're spending too much money on and save and or invest this money instead. Because here's why. If you're able to frugal away $1,000 in a year, that savings invested, assuming an 8% growth rate, as you can see on screen, would be worth over $20,000 40 years from now. And that's because of the power of compound interest, where the interest your money earns also earns interest. By the way, compound interest is a term or a phrase you're definitely gonna wanna get to know if you're just getting started on your FI journey. So I challenge you to think about, and you probably already know as I'm asking this question, what are 1 or more things that you can give up that is ultimately gonna save you $1,000 or more by the end of the year? For me, it was really obvious and easy to pick. It was Starbucks in the morning and going out for lunch in the afternoon. 3 or 4 days a week, I'll be honest, was at Jimmy John's. Now, by cutting these things out and making my cold brew now daily, which costs me pennies, I guess it helps that I work for a coffee company, and also making my own lunch every day, I calculated the savings and it was over $3,400, which was, that was shocking to me when I figured that out, if I'm being honest. So perhaps you can cut your Prime membership or a different subscription, or stop ordering takeout for dinner, or stop going to brunch, or only drink water with your meals. I don't know, get creative here. But it doesn't also have to be just something that you give up completely. It might be just consuming a less expensive version of a thing, if that makes sense. For example, maybe you only go on 1 vacation a year instead of 2, or you get generic knockoff versions of expensive name brands. But for me, I actually gave something up in addition to those other 2 things I mentioned, which was my car. So I invested in a Vespa instead, and I got my motorcycle license, and I put together a video here on the channel recently where I calculated the savings from this transportation hack. And I can't remember the number, but it was somewhere close to $7,000 a year that I estimate that I save just by riding a moped and ditching my car. That's $10,000 when you think about cutting out those 3 things from my life. That's something. And let's just take that $7,000 savings from my transportation hack. If I were to take that and invest it at, again, 8% and left it alone for 40 years, that would turn out to be something like $152,000. So again, think creatively here. What's something or some things you could give up? Perhaps you buy too much makeup, shoes, or clothes. And by the way, on that note, if you're buying something on sale, you're not saving money, you're still spending money. So I just had to throw that out there. But maybe it's spending too much money on going out or just entertainment in general. Pick a thing or 2, be strong, and cut it. Don't kind of cut it, totally cut it out, or replace it with a much cheaper option. Ideally, you invest this money, but another thing you can do instead is, going back to step 3, use this money that you are now saving and put it into that emergency fund to build that up even quicker. Just be sure you actively do something with this money, because if you don't have it earmarked for something, cutting one expensive habit can easily turn into a different expensive habit or hobby. So those are the 5 tips to get you started with financial independence. But before you go, I actually have 3 quick bonus tips, because under promise, over deliver. Bonus step 1, or step 6 here, is to increase your savings rate. A good goal is to aim to save half, which I know if you're just getting started sounds extreme, but what I recommend you do is increase your savings rate by 1% every month. Check out my video about the #1 secret to financial independence. Spoiler alert, it's saving half or more of your income, and that is post-tax. The second bonus tip, or step 7 here, is to find an accountability partner or to talk about your finances with a loved one or a trusted friend. Hopefully you love that friend too. Don't go at it alone. We accomplish much more together than we do on our own. If you're in a relationship, talk openly and honestly about money. Maybe you want to do that exercise from step 1 together, where you both write down 10 things that mean a lot to you, as a great starting point for this conversation. I also recommend you have something like a monthly money meeting, and it doesn't have to be boring and stuffy. Find a way to make it fun. Make it a pseudo happy hour at home where you have cheap drinks during it. Either way, I'm just encouraging you to put yourself out there, talk about money, talk about your goals. We don't talk about money enough, and I think that this is hurting all of us individually. Bonus step 3, or tip 8 here, is probably going to surprise you, so I hope you stuck around for this one. This is to do what makes you happy if you're just getting started. Now, what do I mean by this? This list is my recommendation in order based on personal experience and things I have studied and nerded out about for the last few years. But the reality is personal finance is personal. So do that first, which is most likely to keep you happy and excited and motivated to keep going. There is no one path towards financial independence. For me, for example, buying a house isn't gonna make me happy because I know that's gonna tie up a ton of my assets and really reduce the amount of money I'm allowed to invest. Same goes with my student loans. I don't wanna prioritize paying those off with every single spare dollar I have just yet because I know that I was starting behind when it came to my retirement savings, and I wanna make sure that time is on my side when it comes to compound interest and investing towards retirement. I also say 50% because I've learned over time that that's the sweet spot for me, because once I go beyond 50%, that's where I feel like the short-term unhappiness is gonna set in and it's just not worth it and I'm not gonna be motivated to keep going. Realistically, the next thing I'd have to cut out are vacations or traveling, and that's just not something I'm willing to totally give up in the short term. Don't feel overwhelmed by any of these steps or the order of these steps. Forge your own path. No matter what it is, everybody's path is different and unique on their journey towards financial independence. If nothing else, be sure to constantly remember these 9 words. Work a lot, spend a little, invest the difference. Because as they say, keep it simple. Smarty, you're not stupid. That's it, guys. That's the first 5 steps and a few bonus steps that I recommend you take if you're just getting started on your financial freedom or financial independence journey. I've really enjoyed talking about FI and FIRE here on the channel lately, and I have just been blown away by the amount of support and people commenting and liking and even subscribing to the channel. So thank you very much. I think by the time I post this, we might have crossed 1,000, which is just incredible. So I plan to be here every single week putting out more content like this. I hope you'll consider subscribing if you haven't yet. I am hoping to retire early and once again bring anyone along with me that I can. Like this video if you got some value out of it, and let me know down in the comments below, what's one step that really struck a chord or resonated with you, or what step are you on? Or do you have a tip for anybody else just getting started on their FI journey? If you're just getting started, congratulations. The first step is honestly the hardest. So kudos to you. Just by watching all the way to the end of this video, I can tell you're gonna be successful, so awesome job. The journey can be long and you're gonna hit some roadblocks, no doubt about it, but the journey is the best part. Speaking of, in my next video, I'm going to talk about money mindset and patience during your journey, because no matter where you are in your journey, there are going to be moments where you're gonna hit a wall. So I've got all kinds of great tips and advice I'm gonna share in my next video. I hope you'll check it out. Until next time though, best of luck. I can't wait to talk to you in the next one. Thanks.